Kim Hopkins, welcome to Women Investor Wednesdays.
Hello, thank you for having me, Beth.
I am so happy. So our mutual friend Shannon introduced us.
Yes, the amazing Shannon.
The amazing Shannon. I was just telling you at the conference, she did 2 CrossFit classes in the morning of the conference. I don't know how these women, I was all dressed up in my suit, ready to go down, and I go to check out at the gym, and there's like 20 women at 6 a.m. out doing this like crazy stuff. The second morning, when I didn't have to get up and welcome everyone and give my 20-minute speech, I actually led yoga. So we were the opposite extreme, but Shannon is such a go-getter. I love her, and I think she's been to all 4 of my live conferences. So I really appreciate her support.
Yes, I agree with all of that. And I just have to warn you, I'm part of the CrossFit cult as well. And it is a cult. You should join.
Yeah, no, I'm doing Pilates, yoga, and weight training. And that's the most I've ever done in my life. And I'm very proud of it. But when I was watching them, I'm like, I would probably hurt something if I did what they're doing. But anyway, so Kim, why I'm doing this and why you're here. Okay. During COVID, I heard a stat that of all of the investors in commercial real estate, only 3% were women. And of the 3%, half were women who signed on their husband's guarantees, like didn't know anything about the deal, just signed on the guarantees, and half were inherited. So that means that I was part of 1.5% because I own a small shopping center portfolio down here in South Florida. And I thought that was deplorable. And I started asking my women, friends of mine, do you invest? I'm like, yeah. I go, where do you invest? The stock market. Yeah, but you are in commercial real estate. You do that for a job. Yeah. And you don't invest in commercial real estate. No. Well, why not? Well, I don't have $1 million. I go, well, you don't need $1 million. Well, it's complicated and risky. So is the stock market. And I kept drilling down, and finally the common denominator was, I don't know any women that do it except for you. And that makes sense since there's only 3% of us. So I said, okay, that's a problem I can solve. I can start getting women. I'll put together a virtual conference and I'll interview women that I know that are investing, so that women that aren't investing can see that there are more than just me that are doing it. And we just had our 5th conference 2 weeks ago live. But I think the 3rd year of the conference, I realized that there's only going to ever be probably 2 to 250 women at the conference, because I like to keep it as small so everyone can network. I said, how am I going to reach more women? And that's when I came up with Women Investor Wednesdays. And here you are, Kim Hopkins from Iron Peak Properties.
Fantastic.
So can you remember, and by the way, audience, Kim is, can I share?
Yes.
You're in your 3rd trimester for your 3rd child.
Yes. So it's going to be a Christmas miracle if I can get through this show without having to pee.
Oh my gosh. and you have a girl and a boy. Do you know what this is?
It's a girl.
Amazing. Okay. So bookends, the boy in the middle. All right. So if you have to go, let me know, but hopefully you'll stick it out for the next 30 minutes. So can you remember, you've been investing for about 10 years, right?
Yep, since 2013, so a little bit over there. Yep.
So can you remember way back when you and your husband Ben, right? You guys are a team. What was the first deal that you bought?
Yeah, so the first deal was a multi-tenant light industrial property. So let's break that down for a second, if you like. So industrial means like mostly warehouse. Multi-tenant means more than one tenant. So picture a big warehouse, like 30,000 square feet. And there's like 15 tenants. Everyone has 2,000 square feet. They each have their own roll-up door, small office, small bathroom, very versatile. And we picked that asset class very carefully. We wanted multiple tenants because then there's less of a risk. If you have only one tenant and they vacate, now you're completely underwater because of your mortgage and expenses. So less risk, but then we didn't want the hassle of dealing with people living there and toilets and all that stuff. And neither of us has any aesthetic taste or ability whatsoever. So we didn't want to flip units or make them pretty or anything like that. So we ended up with multi-tenant industrial. And the first property was in Vancouver, Washington. I'm from Portland, Oregon originally, so it's just across the river. It was, let's see, I think it was about $2.5 million. My family is in real estate. They weren't super active with us about it or anything, but they did introduce us to a broker who helped us find this property.
Awesome.
And my parents invested about a third, and we did the other 2/3. And back then, I know sometimes with deals, when you're doing all the work, you take extra, right? Because you take extra for asset management. We didn't know about any of that, so just 1/3 to them, 2/3 to us.
Right.
And we underwrote the deal very carefully. We're both very analytical by nature, almost to the point where the broker was tired of us.
Oh, I can imagine. Well, you're a math nerd, right? You got a Ph.D. in math, or
I do, yes.
And
my husband's
crazy.
microbiology,
and
so
you're
he's not much better.
Biology, right? Yeah. So definitely, you guys are detail-oriented people.
Yes, to a fault. The broker said, "I've never seen anyone analyze a property like you do," and that was not a compliment.
Oh no! And how much was it? Do you remember?
I think it was about $2.5 million.
Oh, right. You said that. And then, okay, so no loan. You guys did you get a loan and then you shared the equity 2/3, 1/3, or you just bought it cash?
We did do a loan. Yes, we did a loan, and it was a beautiful loan. I can't remember the exact terms. Oh, it was a $2.3 million purchase price. And I think we got like 75% loan to value. It was such a wonderful time. Of course, everyone looks back and wishes they bought everything, but we just bought one property because it's all we could afford. So
and you had said, I had heard on another podcast that you got into this because you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
I did. So I left academia and went into the real corporate world, and I climbed that ladder and had some nice golden handcuffs. And then I said, I hate this too. I don't want to work for anyone. And so I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I said to my husband, this is what we're doing. So we made a 5-year plan to replace our W-2 income with our real estate income. And that's what we did.
Did you make it in the 5 years?
We did. Actually, it was a 5-year plan that alternated babies and property. So it went property, baby, property, baby, property. And we made it exactly on time, retired at the end of 2018.
Amazing. So many, I love that you say that you had a plan to do it in 5 years, because as you know, there's a lot of, fodder on the internet. Quit your W-2 and make it doing real estate like in year one.
Yeah.
And that's terrible advice.
Yes.
So 5 years is a good plan.
Yes, and we since we're numbers people, we mapped it out in a spreadsheet. We had, okay, if we buy this property, it will return this. So now we have this much supplemental income. And then if we buy this property, now we'll have this much coming in. And we literally we didn't replace our W-2 income. We replaced enough to cover our expenses. So it wasn't quite as high as our income, but it covered our expenses and then some cushion.
And why did you pick multi-tenant industrial?
Yeah, so that was because of those reasons that it's.
You like that. You like if one tenant, but why industrial versus, let's say, retail or multifamily? Because you didn't want to be doing fix and flips, right?
Yes, thanks for pointing that out. I forgot to mention other commercial properties. So the reason we picked industrial versus retail or office is because it's less tenant improvements. So, and to this day, we still don't like properties with lots of tenant improvements. We were looking at a property here in Phoenix where we live, and it had this gorgeous Pilates studio, just beautiful, but the thing is, it cost the landlord $30,000, $40,000 to turn it into that. And then what happens if that Pilates studio goes out of business? Sure, they have a 10-year lease, but things happen. Right. So they go out of business, and now you're stuck with this space that can kind of only be a Pilates studio, And so now you have to spend $40,000 to flip it for the next person. So the industrial is so versatile. We have CrossFit gyms, again, called joint.
We love it.
We have CrossFit gyms, general contractors, manufacturing, all sorts of stuff.
So how many properties? So you bought that one. How long was it between property number one before you bought property number two?
Yeah, so we bought property number one in 2013, and 2014, and then we bought property number two in 2016. So it was just 2 years later.
So you sat on it. Did you manage it yourself?
No, we had a property, and I really don't like managing the properties myself. That is not my skill set. we really believe in local property management and leasing. So we inherited the property manager who was working at the property when we bought it. He was probably about 65 years old. And, we did our usual thing of asking him 50 questions. And he was like, hey, enough. He's like, I know what I'm doing. And so we learned, yeah, he does know what he's doing. So he did the management for us. He did end leasing, and he did a fantastic job. And ever since then, one of the number one criteria before we close on a property is to make sure we have a local property manager and leasing agent just like him, where everyone at the property thinks they own it.
So you were, at the time when you bought this property in Vancouver, where were you? Where did you live? California?
California, Los Angeles. Yep.
And you didn't have any concern, even though you had grown up in Portland and it was right across, you weren't thinking, well, we're here and then the property's over there, understanding that you had local expertise, but like a lot of people, for me, so I own 4 shopping centers. They're all within 10 minutes of my house. So I might not be analytical, but I'm a control freak.
Well, so our issue is we always live places where the numbers don't make sense. So we did an initial tour of Los Angeles, and the properties were just, first, always begin with the end in mind, right? And we need cash flow. So those properties wouldn't cash flow at all. They're incredibly expensive. They're old, So actually we developed the motto ABC, which was anything but California. And so we've never invested where we live. Even in Phoenix now, we can't find anything that cash flows. So now we have properties in Portland, Vancouver, Utah, Dallas, but nothing in Phoenix. Yeah.
Okay. And so the first deal you found through a broker that you got a recommendation for, have you always bought your properties through brokers?
No. So the next deal we found through LoopNet, which is a popular commercial website. Some people say it's where deals go to die, but I've found deals on it before. And then we've also had some success with off-market deals, which are just the absolute best. So when someone brings you a deal that's not on the market. And then we've also done deals where there was no buyer representation. So there's a seller broker, but we're just representing ourselves.
Yeah, when I buy properties, I don't take a commission because a lot of times brokers, even though they're not supposed to, they want as much of the fee as possible, at least in retail. So I always say, I'm not taking a commission, whatever, you have some deal with the seller, but I'm buying as a principal. But a lot of people take a commission or put part of it in as their equity. It's done so many different ways. So I love buying off-market properties. So for me, because I only buy within 10 minutes of my house, I know all of the owners and I just harangue them until they sell to me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. And just to piggyback on what you said about the commission for the buyer. Yeah. So one of our favorite properties, it was very competitive to get, and all the offers were about the same. And so I made a spreadsheet for the broker and I said, you must forward this to the seller. And it showed him how much more he would save with us because there was no buyer's commission, because I didn't trust the seller's agent to communicate this clearly. So I said, hey, what's the commission if there's no buyer? And I made a spreadsheet for him and we got that deal. So
amazing.
I agree with you completely.
Amazing. How many properties do you guys have now?
About 15 to 20.
And I think I read 375,000 square feet, more or less.
Yeah, we'll say more or less. I'm not, despite being good with numbers, about 400,000 square feet. Despite being good with numbers, I don't remember them.
No sweat. So on average, what's the average size? Are they all about 30,000 square feet?
So my parents were in real estate, so they have a few single tenant warehouses that we're trying to get rid of in Portland, not having a lot of success with that. And then the properties we buy are about 30 to 50,000 square feet. That's right.
Yeah, that's the size I buy my retail strips too. So what was something that, like a lesson learned early on, that you could share with the audience? Because it's not all, rainbows and sunshine, right?
It is not rainbows and sunshine. Don't deviate from what you do. So don't deviate from your criteria. So I will give a couple examples if that's helpful. So number one is, I really believe in what I was explaining earlier about multi-tenant, that it really diversifies risk, because if you have a single tenant and they're gone, you're underwater on your mortgage, it's bad news bears. We don't like stress over here at the Hopkins household. So we deviated. We found a deal that was a great deal. I mean, in our defense, it was a really great deal. It was like a 9 cap around 2017. And it was a 50,000 square foot property, 2 buildings. Half of it was multi-tenant, just what we want. The other half was a 25,000 square foot building that was 1 tenant. And on top of that, it was the seller. It's called a sale leaseback. He wanted to sell us the property and then sign a lease with us to lease it back. Now, I didn't know at the time, because we had never encountered a sale leaseback before, that often is occurring because the seller is in distress. Why sell a piece of real estate if you don't have to, right? Because your business isn't going well. So we went down to Dallas, Fort Worth. He was a nice guy, went out to drinks, seemed like business was going great. Bought the property, signed a 3-year, 5-year lease, I don't remember, stopped paying rent 9 months in on half the property, So fast forward, it was stressful. I mean, bringing it back to children, I sent him a default notice an hour after I gave birth to our son in 2018.
Oh my gosh.
So it was very stressful. And it ended up really well for us. We sold it to an owner user, made a killing, and did a 1031. So that was great, but stress wasn't worth it. So that's one deviation. And then another deviation is we keep ending up with these houses that are houses we've abandoned. We left Los Angeles and we turned that house into a rental. And then we lived in Flagstaff for a while, left that and turned it into a rental. And as I mentioned earlier, we hate houses. We don't like design. We don't like explaining to people where the coffee is. This is not our spirit animal. So that's just another example of, all of our headaches come from these houses, and they make no money. Literally, I don't think they make any money. Airbnb is not a great business for most people. It's kind of oversaturated. So yeah, those are 2 examples of learning experiences.
I'm not into that. The whole vacation home thing, not my thing. I stay in my lane. I have a buy box, and this is what it is. And then people call me, what about this? You go, not in my buy box. Not doing it.
Yes. What are you good at, and what are you passionate about? Stick to that.
Exactly. And what are you good at? I know how to run shopping centers, and I'm really good at it. And I always tell these big retailers that come in, I have one right now that asks for $65 a square foot in tenant improvements.
Wow.
On an 8,800. Yeah. I said, I have a very famous line. I am allergic to TI. And so,
me too.
Yeah. It's just, it's okay. I mean, but I don't own these huge lifestyle centers where if I did, then I would have to give the TI. But in my little strip centers, or in this situation, it's a supermarket anchored strip center, I don't have to do it. I can do a local tenant and not give the TI, and they'll take it as is, and we'll do a deal.
So you basically tell them if they want any TI, they just have to pay for it themselves.
Yeah.
Love it.
They need to take it as is. Well, and then of course they want to reduce the rent. And so, but it's all about supply and demand, right? If I have 3 other offers, I can say that. If it's the only vacancy, I can say that. I mean, I had a project I worked on for the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers in Cleveland, and it was a mall, and I got a consulting assignment. It was 15% occupied. We'd give TI if we could find tenants.
Yeah.
So it's all different, right? It's different where you start with what you have to do, what kind of incentives, right?
Totally.
So do you guys finance all your deals?
Yes, we finance all of them. We have gotten some seller financing, some really sweet seller financing. Yes. Yeah. We did one property in Sedona. So this is just a tiny little property, 6,000 square feet, much smaller than what we usually do, but it was just a killer deal. The guy was 80 years old and he lived in Sedona. He was moving to Florida for his girlfriend, wanted to get rid of all his properties, and some networking group in Phoenix, this 20-year-old girl suggested to me, you should ask for 0% interest. And I was like, that's insane. And then I was like, all right. So I tried asking for 0% interest to get the price up to what he wanted. And he agreed. And so we got 0% interest. It just, catapults your cash flow. He's of course asked me every single year since then if we can pay off the loan. And I'm like, respectfully decline. Thank you.
I have never in my life, I've been doing this 39 years, heard of 0% interest.
I hadn't either.
And a 20-year-old suggested it.
Yes. And I'm not sure it's entirely kosher, but my CPA was like, hey, if he says it's okay, go for it. I was like, all right.
Oh my gosh, amazing. So do you do any syndications?
Very limited. We have, my aunt, my mother-in-law, here and there, but very small. If you go to our website, it looks like we do syndications. We haven't done a lot of it. Two things. Again, marketing is not my strong suit. I don't have a social media presence on purpose. And so it's just not a strong suit. It's not something I've pursued. And then also, and we can talk about this later too, but it's really important to us not to create a job for ourselves. And so we don't really want to report to anybody. And that includes investors. So, we're very responsible. We're very fiscally responsible. But when May rolls around, I'm going to be like, sorry, Auntie, I just had a baby. Give me a month and you'll get your report. It's like, yeah. So we have not syndicated much because of that.
That's it. I don't want a job either. I do syndicate, but I tell people you can invest with me, but don't call me. I'll give you a quarterly report. Yes. Don't bother me.
Yes, exactly.
But I just want more women to invest. I started my investing career. I was an LP in 7 deals. And then I left that company and I started GPing on my own. So I GP'd about 12 deals. Well, in the last 3 years, I've LP'd 17 deals, but they're mostly all with women that are all around the country. So I'll GP, sponsor something within 10 minutes of my house, no problem. But now I meet women that have a deal. They're trying to get started. If I can help them get started, if I like the deal, I'll invest in it. And then other people might come along and it's fun. I invested with a woman, Shiloh Bear. She's been on the podcast and she's in Oakland, California. And she tried to buy a deal 2 or 3 years ago. And it was like flex warehouse, like quasi could make it a little bit retail, like in a funky neighborhood. And she didn't get the deal. And a couple of years later, she got the deal at a much lower price, right? Cool. And so I would have said, never in California either, even though my son lives in LA now. But I love her, and she's phenomenal. And her plan for the deal was great. And it's quasi now. She's making it more retail, which of course is my thing. So I invested with her. And yesterday we just got our 2024 year-end check and our quarter Q1 check for 2025. And she beat both projections. I'm so happy. I'm so happy.
That's awesome. Good for her.
And her report was so great. She's a younger woman. And anyway, I love it.
That's awesome.
If you do start syndicating, call me.
Okay, I will.
Okay, so I don't want to keep you so long. So tell me if you could, so of the, let's say 100 people listening tonight, 91, which is awesome. 91 people live. Shout out to the people at 7:24 Eastern are listening live to me and Kim. If half of them have never dipped their toe in, what would be a couple pieces of advice you would give them, for them to take the leap?
I would really say, I'll say this a few different ways to make sure it's articulate. Make sure your ladder is leaning against the right building. So a perfect real estate
love that
anecdote as well. So I'm experienced in leaning my ladder against the wrong building. So I've got a lot of familiarity with this, climbing different, avenues of careers and whatnot. And I think it's really important, especially this real estate world where people talk a lot about how many doors they have and, assets under management.
Replacing their W-2 in a year.
Yes, yes, all of that, where there's such a focus on growth, growth, growth. And I want to ask why? Like, why do we want 10,000 doors? What's the objective here? Like you said, maybe some people don't mind working 80-hour weeks, but if you don't want to create a job for yourself, you should think about that, like you should think about that. So I always say to really think about the lifestyle you want and get detailed. What time do you wake up? Do you use an alarm clock or do you wake up naturally? If you have kids, are you able to pick your kids up at 3 o'clock from school? Are you able to make them breakfast in the morning? And then what's the kind of lifestyle things you want? Like maybe you don't want a 10,000 square foot house, but maybe you want to fly first class to exotic vacations with your family, and so really map out that future, map it out like for 5 years, then map it out for 10 years, and then go big, map it out for 20 years. Cause I sometimes feel a little pressured by the 5-year plan. I feel a little rushed, but when I look out 20 years, I'm like, okay, I can do that, so really have those marks of what you want your lifestyle and your life design to look like, and then work backwards on what real estate is going to get you there, because you don't want to make the wrong move and pick something that is not going to fit that lifestyle, or, is too much financially or too little. So that would be my main piece of advice.
That's beautiful. So Liv says, absolutely love your candidness, Kim.
Thank you.
So yeah, absolutely. Think about, I agree. 5 years. I like the 20 years. At 64 though, I'm into the 5 and 10 years. But when I was younger, I definitely was doing the 20 years.
Go for 20, girlfriend. I'm going to live to 120.
All right. Well, especially doing CrossFit. Kim, it was such a pleasure having you. And so you have 400,000 square feet of multi-bay industrial in multiple states. You guys rock.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Half of that is my parents. Half of that is ours. We manage all of it. But yeah, we have it in a bunch of different states. We're looking to expand. If people have any favorite markets they want to share with us, we're really looking at Dallas-Fort Worth right now. But we'd love to get into some new markets, cash flow investors. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm thinking like Kansas City or, some of these Midwestern states.
Yes.
Cause I'd say Miami, but you need to stay away from here. The industrial in Miami, when I first started, it was like $3 or $4 a square foot. And now it's like 20.
Yes. I get a lot of deals from Florida and I respond like, I'm confused. Is this meant to cash flow? Like, how do we have a 3 cap and a 6% interest rate? And
exactly.
How's this going to work out here?
Yeah. How can people get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
Sure. So they can go to our website, ironpeakproperties.com, and hit the contact button, or just shoot an email to info@ironpeakproperties.com. It goes to me. So
awesome.
That's an easy way to reach out.
Well, congratulations on baby number 3.
Thank you. Bonus kids.
I think that you are, I've probably interviewed 80 women. You're the first pregnant one.
Awesome. And if I told you my age, you'd be even more impressed, which I'm not going to.
Well, I have an idea because I listened to a couple podcasts, so I could probably do the math, but I wouldn't do the math as well as you. So
yeah, and there was this great button on your podcast thing that said touch up appearance. I'm going to see if I can just like walk around with that thing checked all day. This is great.
Kim, thank you so much. And Shannon, thank you for introducing us. And
thank you, Shannon. We love you.
In the future, I hope you can come to the conference.
Yes, I was going to come this year, but baby got in the way. But next year I'm there. I got it in my calendar and everything.
Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Beth. Take care. Bye.